SNK vs. Capcom The Match of the Millennium is SNK's newest release on the Nintendo Switch and the 6th release in the Neo Geo Pocket Color Selection series. SNK has been hard at work releasing classic Neo Geo Pocket Color classics onto the hybrid system, emulating the original games with a ton of new features on these much higher definition displays. Originally released in 1999, right at the turn of the millennium, this appropriately titled fighter has kind of been a fan favorite for the longest time, but sadly stuck on the classic handheld, with its releases finally brought back to modern consoles for the very first time. You have several game modes at your disposals to start out with. The tournament works as a simple story mode where you pick a character and advance enough through it to beat not just your preset enemy, but also the boss and the secret boss. This is where the majority of your time unlocking goodies will be spent to see each of the playable character stories. The versus mode is you versus the AI or local opponents with a 1v1, 2v2 or even 3v3, which is great for sparring. The Olympic mode is where you can play all sorts of mini games like rhythm games and shooters, and so much more, featuring characters from both of these companies, but kind of doing their own thing. Sadly, these characters are not playable, but it's cool that they're making an appearance. The kicker is that doing well in these events will also unlock points for unlockables that are worth checking out. There's about 26 playable characters in total, including the secret unlocks, and 13 fighters represent each of these companies' long storied history. On the Capcom side, you have a roster mostly made up of Street Fighter characters with a few from Darkstalkers. Meanwhile, for SNK, King of Fighters and Fatal Fury split the bulk of the roster, with a few from Samurai Showdown and Art of Fighting combatants. All in all, don't expect Marvel vs. Capcom levels of IPs being represented here, since this game predates all of those games for quite a while. Before you begin any run, you're given the choice from average, counter, or rush modes for each one of your runs. Average is your typical build-up specials based on attacks. Counter lets you actually charge up to do specials, and rush is more akin to King of Fighters or Darkstalker combo modes. So depending on which game you're more accustomed to, it's worth checking out these modes. However, neither of these modes actually affect the complexity of any of the fighters. All of the staples are there: dashes, backsteps, guards, dodges, throws, commands, specials, and even supers. It's kind of impressive how even with a 2-button layout of the Neo Geo, these games still manage to hold that level of complexity. A tap is a light punch or a light kick, while a hold translates into a heavy kick or a heavy punch. While I can't specifically talk how pixel perfect the emulation is, since that's not something that I can actually gauge without any external software to pixel count, I can tell you that everything looks extremely sharp and it stands out. Obviously, performance is about as perfect as it can actually get, since these games would not be pushing the system and everything feels responsive and quick. I made sure to test this with my DualSense PlayStation 5 controller using the May Flash adapter, and it feels extremely good, but I also tested it on my Switch Lite with the D-pad and it does a good job. Complementing this is the enhancements added by SNK for the Neo Geo Pocket Color selection. This sub-menu lets you change a few options for more flexibility. In the display, you can actually change the Neo Geo colors being overlaid, since there's a variety of different colors to choose from, and there's a no skin option, just a black background, which is my preferred version to play with. The filter removes the granular look, trying to give you the feel of the tiny screen. Personally, I turned this off right away. The best option by far is the zoom feature, that lets you zoom in as much as you want and blow up that tiny screen onto your display and adjust it accordingly. I love this option, and in my 4K TV, it looked really crisp. There's also a rewind feature for those who are looking to cheese their way onto the perfect run. SNK vs. Capcom The Match of the Millennium is already a fantastic game on its own, and a classic fighter that the majority of the fighting fans probably overlooked, but not anymore. This release gives you a chance to check out the early days of the Versus series with a whole new level of features that make it an easy recommendation. Nintendo Sphere gives SNK vs. Capcom The Match of the Millennium on Switch an 8.5 out of 10. If you're new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya!